Elowen didn't know the stranger watching from the shadows was the Alpha King. She didn't know he'd traveled 14 days to find her, driven by desperation and a dying brother's last hope. And she certainly didn't know that the beating she was about to endure would be her last, because the most powerful wolf in the realm was about to step out of the darkness and claim her protection. All she knew was pain. The bucket slipped from her raw fingers, water splashing across the courtyard stones. Elowen dropped to her knees immediately, scrambling to gather what she could, but it was already too late. The shadow fell over her before she could rise. Clumsy little curse. Beta Varn's boot connected with her ribs. The air rushed from her lungs as she collapsed onto the wet stone, gasping. Around her, pack members continued their evening routines, feeding children, hanging laundry, sharpening blades. No one looked. No one ever looked. That water was for the Alpha's horses. Varn crouched beside her, gripping her hair and yanking her head back. His breath was sour with ale. "You know what happens when you waste resources, Sin Eater?" Elowen knew. 23 years of knowing had carved the answer into her bones. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'll fetch more. The second kick caught her shoulder, spinning her onto her back. The evening sky wheeled above her, purple and indifferent. She'd learned long ago not to cry out. Crying only made it last longer. "Your mother was a witch," Varn spat beside her head. "Cursed blood runs through your veins. The only reason we keep you alive is because you're useful." He grabbed her wrist, pressing his thumb into the fresh burn there, a wound she'd absorbed from the blacksmith's apprentice that morning. "Heal our pain, carry our sickness, and maybe we let you eat tonight. That's the deal, curse-bearer. That's all you're worth." Elowen closed her eyes. She'd heard these words so many times they'd lost their edges, worn smooth like river stones. Her mother had been executed when Elowen was 7, burned alive in the center of this very courtyard while the pack watched and cheered. They said Mirael had cursed the previous Alpha's son, made him sicken and die with her witch touch. They were wrong. Mirael had tried to save him, had absorbed his fever into her own body until it killed her from the inside. But the boy died anyway, and the pack needed someone to blame. Now they used Elowen the same way they'd used her mother. Every injury, every illness, every wound that was too painful or too slow to heal, they brought to her. She would place her hands on their flesh, and their suffering would become hers. She'd feel their broken bones knitting in her own body, their fevers burning through her blood, their cuts opening across her skin. And then they'd kick her for being a curse. Varn raised his hand again, and Elowen braced for impact. It never came. A grip like iron closed around Varn's wrist, stopping his fist mid-swing. Elowen's eyes flew open. A stranger stood behind the beta, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark traveling clothes that were finer than anything she'd seen in Thornwick Pack. His face was half-shadowed by the dying light, but she could see his jaw, hard as carved granite, and his eyes. His eyes were the pale gold of winter sunrise, and they burned with barely contained fury. "I don't recall," the stranger said, his voice low and deadly calm. "This pack greeting visitors by beating women in their courtyard." Varn tried to wrench free but couldn't move, his face purpled with rage and something else. Fear, Elowen realized. She'd never seen Varn afraid of anything. "This isn't your concern, traveler." Varn's voice had lost its swagger. "Pack discipline is pack business." "Discipline." The stranger's lip curled. "Is that what you call it? She's a sin-eater, a curse-bearer. She's less than... She's a woman on the ground with blood on her face." The stranger released Varn's wrist with a shove that sent the beta stumbling backward. "And you're a coward who finds courage in cruelty." Silence rippled through the courtyard. The pack members who'd been studiously ignoring Elowen's beating now stood frozen, watching. Varn's hand moved toward the knife at his belt. "I wouldn't." The stranger's voice dropped to something almost soft, almost gentle. And somehow, that was more terrifying than shouting. I truly wouldn't. He turned from Varn as if the beta no longer existed and crouched beside Elowin. Up close, his features were sharp and striking. High cheekbones, a nose that had been broken at least once, dark hair that fell across his forehead. But it was the way he looked at her that stole her breath. No disgust, no pity. Just steady, unwavering attention, as if she were the only person in the world worth seeing. "Can you stand?" he asked. Elowin blinked. No one had asked her that in years. They usually just told her to get up or dragged her where they needed her. Her voice cracked. "Yes." He offered his hand. She stared at it, certain this was a trick, a new kind of cruelty she hadn't yet learned to expect. "I don't bite," he said, and something flickered at the corner of his mouth. "Well, not unless asked." She took his hand. The moment their skin touched, something sparked through her. Warm, electric, completely unfamiliar. Her gift usually only showed her pain. But this felt like the opposite. Like sunlight after endless winter. The stranger's eyes widened slightly, and she knew he'd felt it too. Before either could speak, a voice cut across the courtyard like a blade. "Who the hell are you?" Alpha Draven emerged from the Great Hall, flanked by his personal guard. His gray eyes swept from Elowin to the stranger to Varn's humiliated scowl, calculating, assessing. The stranger straightened to his full height, keeping Elowin slightly behind him, protecting her. When had anyone ever protected her? "I'm the man who's about to make you a very generous offer," the stranger said, "or a very dangerous enemy." He smiled, and it didn't reach those winter gold eyes. "Your choice, Alpha Draven." Alpha Draven led them to his study, a cramped room that smelled of stale smoke and old leather. Elowin stood near the door, uncertain why she'd been included. The stranger had simply looked at her when Draven tried to dismiss her, and that single look had been enough to make the Alpha reconsider. "Sit," Draven said, gesturing to a chair. "I'll stand." The stranger's tone left no room for argument. "And so will she." Draven's eyes flicked to Elowin with visible irritation. "The Sin Eater is pack property. Whatever business you have, she's not property." Each word landed like a hammer strike. "She's a person with a gift. One your pack has exploited and brutalized for years, apparently. You don't understand our ways, traveler." "I understand cruelty perfectly well." The stranger moved to the window, his profile sharp against the last light of dusk. "I also understand desperation, which is why I'm here." Draven leaned back, some of his tension easing into calculation. "You want something." "I want her." Elowin's heart stopped. "The Sin Eater!" Draven laughed. "You came all this way for our little curse? She's useful, I'll grant you, but hardly worth—" "I know what she is." The stranger turned, and his gaze found Elowin's across the room. "I know what her mother was too. Muriel wasn't a curse. She was a mercy bearer, one of the rarest gifts in the old bloodlines. Healers who take suffering into themselves so others don't have to carry it." Elowin couldn't breathe. Her mother's name in a stranger's mouth, spoken with respect instead of hatred. "Her daughter has the same gift," the stranger continued. "Stronger, maybe, after years of being forced to use it. And I have someone who needs that mercy more than you need a scapegoat to kick." "Who?" Draven's greed was barely concealed. If this stranger wanted Elowin badly enough to travel here, perhaps she was worth more than the pack realized. The stranger was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its edge, worn down to something raw. "My brother. He was wounded 3 months ago, a blade cursed with shadow poison. It's killing him slowly. Every healer in my territory has tried. Every herb, every remedy, every magic we possess. Nothing works." his hands clenched at his sides. The poison feeds on his pain, regenerates from his suffering. The only way to save him is to remove that suffering entirely, take it from him. And give it to her, Draven finished, smiling. You want our sin eater to absorb your brother's curse. I want to offer her a choice. Something she's clearly never been given here. The stranger crossed to where Elowen stood and lowered his voice, speaking as if they were the only two people in the room. Your mother saved my brother once, when we were children. He had a fever that nearly killed him. Muriel was passing through our territory, and she placed her hands on him, and she took his sickness into herself. She suffered for 3 days so he could live. His eyes held hers, fierce and sad. I was 8 years old. I never forgot her kindness, and I never forgot the daughter she said she'd left behind, a little girl with the same gift, hiding in a pack that would never deserve her. Tears burned Elowen's eyes. Her mother had spoken of her, had thought of her even while saving strangers, had left a trail of breadcrumbs across years and distance that somehow led to this moment. She said if anything ever happened to her, the stranger continued, and if her daughter survived, that I should find her, protect her. He paused. It took me 16 years, Elowen. I'm sorry it wasn't sooner. The sound of her name, her actual name, not Sin Eater, not curse, not worthless, broke something open in her chest. Why now? She whispered. Why come now, after all this time? Pain flickered across his features, and she saw the truth before he spoke it. Because my brother is dying, and because I finally have enough power to keep the promise I made to your mother. His jaw tightened. I'm not going to pretend this isn't selfish. I need your gift, Elowen. But I'm not going to take it. I'm going to ask. He reached into his coat and withdrew something small, a folded piece of cloth, faded and worn. She asked me to give you this, if I ever found you. Elowen took it with trembling hands, unfolded it. A lock of dark hair tied with a red thread, her mother's hair. She would know the scent anywhere. Lavender and wood smoke, home and safety and everything she'd lost. The tears fell freely now, and she didn't try to stop them. Alpha Draven's voice shattered the moment. This is all very touching, but you haven't told me what you're offering in exchange for our pack's asset. The stranger turned, and his expression went cold again, all vulnerability locked away. I'm offering you the chance to name your price, he said. Gold, land, trading rights, whatever you want, or... He let the word hang. You can refuse, and I can tell you exactly who I am and why refusing would be the worst mistake of your miserable life. Draven's eyes narrowed. Who are you? The stranger smiled. It was not a kind smile. My name is Kaelin Voss. The words landed like a thunderclap. Draven went pale, his arrogance crumbling. The Alpha King? He stammered. Of the Northern Realm? The same. Elowen's knees nearly buckled. The Alpha King. The wolf who ruled 12 territories, commanded 10,000 warriors, and answered to no one. Stories painted him as a ruthless conqueror, a cold strategist who'd united warring packs through equal parts diplomacy and bloodshed. They said he'd killed his own uncle to claim the throne. They said he showed no mercy. This man had just crouched in a muddy courtyard and asked if she could stand. Kaelin watched Draven's mental calculations with visible contempt. I see you're reassessing my offer. Your Majesty. Draven's voice had turned oily. If I'd known who you were, I would have prepared a proper welcome. Please, let me arrange quarters, a meal. I'm not here for hospitality. Kaelin cut him off. I'm here for her. Name your price or refuse. I don't have time for politics. Draven licked his lips. The Sin Eater is valuable to us. Her gift serves the entire pack. To lose her would be what? Inconvenient? Kaelin's tone could have frozen fire. Would you have to actually care for your wounded instead of dumping their pain on a woman you treat like refuse? She's dangerous, Draven tried. Her bloodline is cursed, her mother killed. Her mother saved my brother's life, and I've spent 5 minutes in your pack and already watched your beta beat her for spilling water. Kaelin stepped closer, and Draven shrank back despite himself. Don't speak to me of danger. The most dangerous thing in this room is my patience, and it's running out. Silence stretched taut as a bowstring. Finally, Draven spoke. 1,000 gold pieces, and favorable trading terms with the Northern Realm for the next decade. Done? Elowen's breath caught. 1,000 gold pieces was more than Thornwick earned in 5 years. He'd agreed without hesitation, without negotiation, as if she were worth any price. But Kaelin wasn't finished. There's one more condition. Name it, Your Majesty. Kaelin's eyes found Allowance. She has to agree, freely, without coercion, without threats, without any pressure from you or your pack. He held her gaze. If she says no, I leave. The deal is void. No gold, no trade, no consequences to her. I'll find another way. Draven sputtered. But those are my terms. Kaelin didn't look away from Elowen. I won't take her against her will. I won't be another person who uses her without her consent. She chooses, or there's no deal. Something cracked in Elowen's chest. Her whole life, she'd been told what to do. Hold this injury. Carry this pain. Be grateful we let you live. No one had ever asked what she wanted. No one had ever given her a choice. Until now. What happens if I come with you? Her voice was steadier than she expected. You try to heal my brother. If you can't, I'll still pay your pack. And you'll be free to go wherever you want, with gold enough to start over anywhere in the realm. Kaelin paused. If you can save him, I'll owe you a debt beyond measure, and I pay my debts. How long would I be gone? However long it takes. Weeks, maybe? A month. I won't rush you or push you beyond what you can bear. Elowen thought about Thornwick, the courtyard where her mother burned, Varn's boots against her ribs, the endless cycle of pain that wasn't hers, carried in a body that was never allowed to heal. Then she thought about her mother's hair, warm against her palm, the lock she still clutched like a lifeline. Her mother had helped strangers, had suffered for people who could never repay her, had left behind a legacy of mercy in a world that showed her none. Maybe it was time for Elowen to do the same, but on her own terms. I have conditions too, she said. Kaelin's eyebrows rose, but he nodded. Name them. I want your word that I can leave whenever I choose, that I'm a guest, not a prisoner. You have it. I want no one to touch me without permission. No one uses my gift without my consent. Not your healers, not your court, not even you. Something warm kindled in those winter gold eyes. Agreed. And I want... Her voice faltered. This last one felt too big, too greedy. But she forced herself to continue. I want to know if I'm worth more than my gift, if I'm just useful to you, or if I'm... something else. Kaelin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. You're already something else, Elowen. You just don't know it yet. He extended his hand. She stared at it, remembering the spark that had passed between them in the courtyard. The warmth, where she usually only felt pain. Do we have a deal? He asked. Elowen took a breath and placed her hand in his. The spark that passed between their palms was stronger this time, a pulse of heat that traveled up Elowen's arm and settled somewhere behind her ribs. Kaelin's fingers tightened around hers, and she saw his jaw clench, a flash of startled recognition crossing his features before he masked it. A handshake won't hold? Draven said, his voice carrying a sneer he couldn't quite hide. If you're taking our Sin-Eater, I want something binding. A blood oath. Elowen expected Kaelin to refuse. Blood oaths were ancient magic, unbreakable and dangerous. To enter one lightly was foolishness. To enter one with a stranger was madness. But Kalen simply nodded. Agreed. He released her hand and drew a blade from his belt. Not a fighting knife, but something older. The handle was wrapped in dark leather, the steel etched with symbols that seemed to shift in the lamplight. Old wolf script, Elowen realized. The language of oaths and bindings. Do you know what a blood oath means? Kalen asked her quietly, ignoring Draven entirely. Our blood mingles. Our promises become unbreakable. If either of us violates the terms, the magic extracts a price. Yes. His eyes held hers. Are you certain? No one had ever asked if she was certain about anything. Elowen swallowed hard. What are the exact terms? I swear to protect you for the duration of your stay in my territory. To honor your conditions, freedom to leave, consent for your gift, treatment as a guest, to pay your pack regardless of whether you succeed in healing my brother. He paused. And to release you when you choose to go, with no pursuit and no retaliation. And my oath? You swear to try, that's all. To attempt to heal my brother with your gift. Success isn't required, only effort. The imbalance struck her immediately. His oath bound him to a dozen specific promises. Hers asked only that she try. That's not equal, she said. No. The hard edges of his face gentled. It's not meant to be. Before she could respond, he drew the blade across his palm. Blood welled up, dark and gleaming. He offered the knife to her, handle first, and waited. Elowen took it. The weight felt right in her hand, balanced and sure. She pressed the edge to her own palm, wincing as it bit into flesh. The pain was nothing compared to what she carried daily, a small hurt, a chosen hurt. She reached for his hand. The moment their blood touched, the world went white. Not painful, overwhelming. Elowen felt the magic seal around them like a closing fist, binding their words into something unbreakable. But beneath that, wrapped through it like threads of gold in dark cloth, she felt something else. Recognition. Her wolf. The part of herself she'd learned to silence because Thornwick punished any hint of her beast, surged forward with a keening cry. Mine, it howled. Found. Finally found. She gasped, trying to pull back. But Kalen's grip held firm. His eyes had gone wide, the winter gold blazing bright, and she knew with absolute certainty that he felt it too. Mate. The word echoed through her blood, through the bond that had nothing to do with oaths and everything to do with fate. Then the magic released them, and they stumbled apart, both breathing hard. Draven was watching with narrow eyes. It's done then. She's yours. She's not mine, Kalen said roughly. She's her own. But his gaze lingered on Elowen, and she saw the question burning there. Did you feel that? She looked away first, pressing a cloth to her bleeding palm, her pulse racing beneath her skin. Neither of them spoke of what had passed between them. But as Kalen led her out of Draven's study and into the cold night air, Elowen felt the new bond humming beneath her skin. The oath they'd spoken, yes, but also the other one. The one they hadn't chosen. The one that terrified her far more than any blood magic ever could. They rode through the night. Kalen had brought 3 warriors with him, silent, efficient men who treated Elowen with a deference that made her deeply uncomfortable. One of them, a scarred wolf named Brennan, had offered her his cloak without a word when he noticed her shivering. She'd tried to refuse. He'd simply draped it over her shoulders and returned to his horse. No one in Thornwick had ever given her anything. The northern realm revealed itself slowly as dawn broke over the mountains. Elowen had heard stories, harsh winters, harsher people, a land of ice and iron where only the strong survived. She'd expected bleakness. Instead, she found beauty. Snow-capped peaks turned pink and gold in the rising sun. Forests of ancient pines stretched across valleys like dark green oceans. Rivers cut through the landscape, their waters so clear she could see stones glittering at the bottom. And everywhere, signs of life, smoke rising from distant villages, herds of elk moving across meadows, hawks circling overhead. "It's not what you expected," Kaelin said, falling back to ride beside her. Eloin startled. He'd kept his distance since the blood oath, and she'd been grateful for the space. The bond, both bonds, felt too new, too raw. She needed time to understand what had happened. "No," she admitted. "I thought it would be colder." "It is cold. You'll see when winter truly sets in." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "But there's warmth too if you know where to find it." They crested a ridge, and Eloin's breath caught. The castle rose from the mountain itself, all dark stone and sharp towers, its walls carved directly into the rock face. It should have looked forbidding. It should have looked like a fortress designed to keep enemies out and prisoners in. Instead, smoke curled from a dozen chimneys. Gardens terraced down the mountainside, green even in the cold. And as they approached, Eloin saw people moving through the courtyards, not with the tense efficiency of fear, but with the easy rhythm of home. "Valdris Keep," Kaelin said. "My family has held it for 12 generations. It's beautiful." He glanced at her, something unreadable in his expression. "I hoped you'd think so." They crossed a bridge over a gorge that dropped into mist and shadow. Guards at the gate straightened when they saw Kaelin, but their greetings were warm, familiar. One of them, a young woman with braided red hair, actually grinned. "You found her then?" "I found her." Kaelin swung down from his horse and moved to help Eloin dismount. His hands were careful at her waist, lingering only a moment before releasing her. "Mira, this is Eloin. She's our guest. See that everyone knows she's to be treated with the same respect they'd show me." Mira's eyebrows rose, but she nodded without question. "Yes, Your Majesty." Inside the keep, the contradictions multiplied. The corridors were lined with tapestries depicting hunts and battles, but also gardens and celebrations. Fireplaces blazed in every room, filling the air with warmth and the scent of cedar. Servants nodded respectfully as they passed, and none of them flinched or averted their eyes from Eloin. She wasn't sure what to do with that. In Thornwick, people looked through her like she was made of glass. Here, they looked at her like she was real. A woman met them at the top of a winding staircase. Older, with silver streaks in her dark hair and kind eyes set in a weathered face. "You must be exhausted," she said to Eloin, her voice warm. "I'm Sorsha, head of household. Your rooms are prepared and there's hot water waiting. You'll want to rest before—" She trailed off, glancing at Kaelin. "Before you meet my brother," he finished quietly. "Yes. Take whatever time you need, Eloin. There's no rush." But there was. She could see it in the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. His brother was dying. Every hour mattered. "I'd like to see him," she said. "Now, if possible." Kaelin studied her for a long moment. "You're certain? You've been traveling all night. You should eat. Sleep. I've worked through worse." The words came out sharper than she intended, edged with years of never being allowed to rest. She softened her tone. "Please, let me try." He nodded slowly. "This way." They climbed another staircase, narrower and older than the rest, until they reached a heavy oak door guarded by 2 warriors. Both looked exhausted, grief etched into their faces. Kaelin pushed open the door. The room beyond was warm and dim, curtains drawn against the daylight. A fire crackled in the hearth, and in the center of a massive bed, barely visible beneath layers of furs, lay a young man. He looked like Kaelin, the same sharp features, the same dark hair. But where Kaelin was all controlled power, this man was fading. His skin was gray, his cheeks hollow, and his breathing shallow and labored. Dark veins crawled up his neck like poison beneath the skin. Even unconscious, his hands twitched occasionally, a warrior's instincts refusing to fully surrender, even to poison. "Elowyn," Kaelin said softly, "this is my brother, Theron." She approached the bed slowly, her gift already reaching out, sensing. The shadow poison hit her like a wave of ice. Wrong, corrupted, hungry. It fed on pain, Kaelin had said. She understood now. It wasn't just killing Theron, it was devouring him. "Can you help him?" Kaelin's voice was rough with hope he was trying not to show. Elowyn placed her hand on Theron's forehead, and the world shattered. Pain exploded through Elowyn's body. Not the dull ache of absorbed injuries she was used to, but something alive. Something that clawed at her from the inside, screaming with a voice that wasn't human. She saw flashes, images burning through her mind faster than she could process, a blade glinting in torchlight. Theron fighting, outnumbered. A figure in a dark cloak driving the cursed sword into his side. And a voice, familiar somehow, dripping with satisfaction, saying, "The king's beloved brother, this will break him." Elowyn wrenched her hand back with a gasp, stumbling away from the bed. Kaelin caught her before she fell, his arms strong and steady around her. "Elowyn, Elowyn, look at me." She forced her eyes to focus. His face swam into view, tight with concern. "What happened? What did you see?" She struggled to find words. Her gift had never done that before. Shown her memories, visions of the past. She absorbed pain, not images. But the shadow poison was different. It carried something else inside it. Intent. "The poison," she managed. "It's not just killing him, it's been crafted, designed. Someone made it specifically for him." Kaelin's expression hardened. "We suspected as much. The blade that wounded him was no ordinary weapon." "No, you don't understand." Elowyn gripped his arms, steadying herself. "The visions showed me the attack. I saw it through Theron's eyes. I saw the person who stabbed him. They knew who Theron was. They wanted this. Wanted to hurt you through him. Did you see their face?" She closed her eyes, trying to recall the fractured images. The cloaked figure had been careful, face hidden in shadow. But there had been something. A sigil on the cloak's clasp, glimpsed for just a moment. "A serpent," she said slowly, "coiled around a dagger. Silver on black." Kaelin went very still. "You recognize it," Elowyn said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." His voice was carefully controlled, but she felt the tension radiating from him. "It's the crest of House Valis, one of the oldest families in the Northern Realm." He released her gently, stepping back to pace toward the window. "Lord Soren Valis sits on my council. He was my father's closest friend. He held me at my naming ceremony." The parallel to her own mother struck Elowyn like a physical blow. Another trusted figure. Another betrayal hiding in plain sight. "Could you be wrong?" she asked quietly. "Could someone else have used the crest?" "It's possible." But his tone said he didn't believe it. "Soren has opposed several of my decisions since I took the throne. He wanted me to marry his daughter, unite our houses. I refused." Kaelin's hands clenched at his sides. He smiled and said he understood. Said he supported my choice. "And then your brother was attacked." 3 weeks later. Elowyn looked back at Theron, still and gray against the pillows. The shadow poison pulsed beneath his skin like a living thing, feeding on his suffering, growing stronger with each passing hour. "I can help him," she said, "but it won't be quick. The poison it's not just physical. It's tied to whoever created it. To their hatred." She met Kaelin's eyes. If I absorb it, I'll feel everything. Every bit of malice they poured into that blade. No. The word was immediate, fierce. I won't ask you to suffer that. You're not asking. I'm offering. Elowen straightened, drawing on reserves she didn't know she had. But I need to do it in stages, a little at a time. If I try to take it all at once, it might kill me. Then we do it your way. Whatever you need. Rest, food, anything. You'll have it. She nodded, then hesitated. There's something else. When I touched him, I didn't just feel the poison. I felt fragments, memories. Not just from the attack, but from other moments too. Happy ones, sad ones. She struggled to explain. My gift has never worked that way before. I only absorb pain. But with him, with that poison, it's like I'm seeing pieces of his life. And beneath the pulling, she felt something else. A pressure building in her palms, as if the pain wanted to flow back the way it came. She pushed the sensation aside. She didn't know what it meant. Not yet. Kaelin was quiet for a moment. The shadow poison feeds on suffering. Perhaps your gift is doing the opposite, drawing out what isn't suffering, giving him relief by taking the memories that hurt. It made a strange kind of sense. Elowen had always been a vessel for others' pain. Maybe now she was becoming something more. I'll need to touch him again, she said. Regularly. Each session will weaken the poison a little more. But Kaelin. She bit her lip. If Lord Valus is truly behind this, he'll know. He'll realize what I'm doing. That I'm a threat to whatever plan he has. Let him. Kaelin's voice dropped to something dangerous. If Soren Valus wants to harm you, he'll have to go through me. Through my entire guard. Through everyone in this keep who's already heard what you're willing to do for Theron. You can't watch me every moment. No. He moved closer, and the air between them seemed to thicken. But I can make sure you're never alone. Never vulnerable. Never within reach of anyone who might wish you harm. Elowen should have argued. Should have insisted she could take care of herself. She'd been doing it for 23 years after all. But the exhaustion was hitting her now. The vision's aftermath leaving her hollowed out and shaking. Okay, she whispered. Kaelin's expression shifted, the hard edges softening into something tender. He reached out, slowly enough that she could pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was feather-light, almost reverent. Thank you, he said quietly, for trying, for being willing to suffer for someone you've never met. Your brother seems worth saving. He is. A pause. But that's not why you're doing it, is it? Elowen thought about her mother, about mercy given freely even when it cost everything, about the legacy she'd spent 16 years running from and was only now beginning to understand. No, she admitted. It's not. Kaelin didn't ask her to explain. He simply nodded, as if her answer had confirmed something he already knew. Rest now. Sorsha will show you to your rooms. We'll begin again tomorrow, when you're stronger. He glanced at his brother one more time, grief and hope warring in his eyes. And Elowen, whatever happens, whatever you discover in those visions, you can trust me. I need you to know that. She wanted to believe him, wanted it more than she'd wanted anything in years. But trust was a luxury she'd never been able to afford. I'll try, she said. It was the most honest answer she could give. 5 days passed in a rhythm Elowen had never known. Mornings, she worked with Theron. Each session drained her. The shadow poison fought back, clawing at her gift like a wounded animal. But she was making progress. The dark veins had retreated from his neck. His breathing came easier. Once, on the 3rd day, his eyes had fluttered open, and he'd looked at her with confused gratitude before slipping back into unconsciousness. You're saving him, Kaelin had said, his voice rough with emotion. I can see it. After noon, she explored Valdres Keep, the library with its towering shelves and dusty tomes, the kitchens where the cook pressed warm bread into her hands and refused to let her leave without eating, the training yards, where warriors sparred with brutal efficiency but always nodded respectfully when she passed, and always, always, she felt Kaylin's presence, not hovering, not suffocating, just there. A steady warmth at the edge of her awareness, the mate bond humming between them like a plucked string. They hadn't spoken of it. The blood oath, yes. Theron's progress, constantly. But the other bond, the one that made her skin prickle whenever he entered a room, that sent sparks through her blood when their hands accidentally brushed, that remained unaddressed. Until the fifth night. Eowyn couldn't sleep. The latest vision had been worse than the others. Not just Theron's memories, but glimpses of Lord Valus himself. His cold smile, his calculating eyes, the satisfaction in his voice as he'd watched the poisoned blade sink home. She found herself on the battlements without quite meaning to go there, wrapped in a borrowed cloak, staring out at the moonlit mountains. "You should be resting." She didn't turn at Kaylin's voice. She'd felt him approaching, the bond alerting her to his presence like a second heartbeat. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "The visions stay with me sometimes." He moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth through the cold air. "What did you see tonight?" Valus. His face when he ordered the attack. She shivered. "He hates you. Not just politically, personally. It's like a poison of its own, eating at him. We were friends once, or I thought we were." Kaylin's voice was heavy. "When I was young, he taught me to ride, to hunt. My father trusted him completely." A pause. "I think that's what made the betrayal possible. We never saw him as a threat because we loved him. Love makes us blind." "Yes." He turned to look at her, and the moonlight caught his features, softening the sharp edges. "It also makes us brave." Eowyn's heart stuttered. "Kaylin, I know we agreed not to discuss it." His voice dropped low. "The bond. What happened during the oath? I've been trying to respect your space, give you time to adjust to everything. But Eowyn?" He exhaled slowly. "I feel you. All the time. When you're tired, when you're scared, when you're in pain from absorbing my brother's suffering. It's like you're under my skin, and I don't want to, get you out." She should step back. Should remind him of her conditions, her freedom, the fact that she'd be leaving when this was over. Instead, she said, "I feel you too." His breath caught. "You do? When you're worried about Theron, when you're angry about Valus, when you're—" She stopped, heat rising to her cheeks. "When I'm what?" "When you're watching me," she whispered, and trying not to. Kaylin made a sound low in his throat. Not quite a laugh, not quite a groan. "I'm doing a terrible job of it, apparently." "Terrible," she agreed, but she was smiling now, and so was he. He reached for her slowly, giving her time to retreat. His fingers brushed her jaw, tilted her face up toward his. "I'm not going to kiss you," he said roughly, "unless you want me to. Unless you're certain. Because once I start, Eowyn, I don't think I'll be able to stop wanting you." Her whole life, she'd been told what she was worth. Cursed. Useful. Expendable. No one had ever looked at her like Kaylin was looking at her now, like she was precious and powerful and worth waiting for. "I'm certain," she breathed. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate. Hungry. Years of loneliness pouring out of both of them at once. His hand slid into her hair, angling her head back as he deepened the kiss. She grabbed fistfuls of his shirt, pulling him closer, closer until there was no space between them at all. The mate bond sang. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Kalen pressed his forehead to hers. I'm falling for you, he said quietly. I know it's too fast. I know you might leave when Theron is healed, but I need you to know, this isn't just the bond, this is me, choosing you. Tears burned her eyes. I don't know if I can be what you need. A queen, a mate, someone who belongs in this world. You already belong. His thumb traced her cheekbone. You just don't believe it yet. Ask me again, she said, echoing words she didn't know she'd been holding. When this is over, when Valus is dealt with, and Theron is well, and I've had time to breathe. Ask me to stay, and I'll give you an answer. Relief and longing flooded his expression, raw and unguarded. I can wait. For you, I can wait forever. She kissed him again, softer this time, a promise rather than a confession. And somewhere in the keep below, Lord Valus's spy watched from the shadows and began composing a message to his master. The attack came 2 days later. Elowen was alone in Theron's chamber, deep in a healing session, when she felt it. A wrongness in the air, a shift in the energy around her. Her gift screamed a warning she didn't understand. She pulled back from Theron just as the door burst open. 3 men in dark leather, faces covered, blades drawn. They moved with professional efficiency, fanning out to block her escape. The Sin Eater, one of them said. Lord Valus sends his regards. Fear coiled tight in her chest. She had no weapons, no training, nothing but a gift that required touch to work. But she also had something else. The mate bond flared, bright and urgent, and she felt Kalen's awareness snap toward her like a compass finding north. He was coming. She just had to survive until he arrived. You don't want to do this, she said, backing toward the bed where Theron lay unconscious. The Alpha King will kill you. The Alpha King will be dead by morning. The lead assassin advanced. Valus is moving tonight. The castle will fall, and you'll be the first casualty. Dread clawed at her throat, not just for herself, for Kalen, for Theron, for everyone in Valdris Keep who'd shown her kindness. The assassin lunged. Elowen dodged barely, his blade slicing through the air where her throat had been. She grabbed the only thing within reach, a heavy candlestick, and swung with all her strength. It connected with the side of his head. He staggered, cursing, blood streaming down his face. The second assassin came at her from the left. She couldn't evade in time, but she didn't have to. A hand shot out from the bed, grabbing the assassin's wrist and twisting sharply. Bones cracked. The man screamed. Theron. His eyes were open, blazing with fever-bright fury, his body moving on pure instinct even as the shadow poison still pulsed through his veins. Get away, he rasped, from my brother's mate. The third assassin hesitated, a fatal mistake. The door exploded inward, and Kalen was there, sword already swinging, his face a mask of lethal rage. The fight was over in seconds. When the last assassin fell, Kalen crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled Elowen into his arms. Are you hurt? His hands ran over her, checking for wounds. Did they touch you? I'm fine. I'm fine. But she was shaking, adrenaline and terror crashing through her system. Kalen, they said Valus is moving tonight. He's coming for you. I know. His jaw tightened. My guards intercepted a messenger an hour ago. Valus has gathered his forces. He plans to take the keep by dawn. Then we need to run. Hide. Something. No. Kalen's eyes met hers and she saw the king beneath the man. Cold. Calculating. Ready for war. We end this tonight. From the bed, Theron spoke, his voice weak but determined. I'm coming with you. You can barely stand. I stood well enough to save your mate. Theron pushed himself upright, swaying but stubborn. Valus poisoned me. I want to watch him fall. Kalen looked between his brother and Elowen, something complicated moving across his face. Elowen stays here. he said finally. Protected. Hidden. I won't risk her in battle. No. The word surprised her as much as him. I'm not hiding while people die for me. Not again. This isn't your fight. It became my fight the moment I touched your brother and saw Velas's face. She stepped closer, gripping his arms. I can help. My gift. If I can touch him, touch Velas, I might be able to see his plans, his weaknesses. It's too dangerous. Everything is dangerous. She held his gaze. You promised I'd have a choice. This is my choice. Kalen stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. Together then? He said. All of us. They met Velas's forces in the Great Hall. The traitor had gathered 30 men, loyal soldiers from his own territory, mercenaries bought with promises of gold and power. They'd infiltrated the keep through servant passages, overwhelming the night watch before the alarm could sound. But Kalen had been ready. His warriors poured in from every entrance, outnumbering Velas's forces 2-1. Steel clashed against steel, the air filled with shouts and the copper scent of blood. Ilawan stayed close to Theron, who fought despite his weakness, each movement costing him visibly. She watched for Velas, searching the chaos for the serpent's sigil. There. He stood near the great fireplace, directing his men with cold precision, a sword in one hand and a cruel smile on his face. When his eyes found Ilawan across the hall, his smile widened. The Sin Eater, he called. I should have killed you the moment you arrived, but I thought you might be useful. A bargaining chip, perhaps. I see now I underestimated you. You underestimated a lot of things. Kalen's voice cut through the din. He stepped forward, his warriors parting to let him pass. Blood streaked his face, none of it his own. Surrender, Sorin. It's over. Is it? Velas raised his hand. A dozen crossbows emerged from the shadows above, archers hidden in the rafters, their bolts aimed directly at Kalen. I've spent 20 years planning this, Velas said. Did you think I wouldn't have contingencies? The hall went still. Even the fighting paused, both sides frozen in a deadly tableau. Drop your sword, Velas continued. Kneel before me, and I might let your brother live. The Sin Eater, too, if she behaves. Ilawan's mind raced. She could see Kalen calculating, weighing options. If he surrendered, Velas would kill them all anyway. If he fought, the crossbows would cut him down. Unless someone changed the equation. She moved before she could talk herself out of it. Lord Velas. She stepped forward, hands raised in apparent surrender. You want me? I'll come willingly. Just let the others go. Ilawan, no. Kalen started. Quiet. Velas's eyes gleamed with triumph. The Sin Eater offers herself. How touching. He gestured her forward. Come then. Let's see what secrets you're hiding. She walked toward him slowly, each step deliberate. The crossbows tracked Kalen, not her. No one considered her a threat. That was their mistake. When she was close enough to touch, Velas grabbed her arm roughly. The moment their skin connected, she struck. Not with fists, with her gift. She'd never tried to push before, only pull. But the shadow poison had taught her something. Pain could flow both ways. She poured into Velas every ounce of suffering she'd absorbed over 23 years. Every beating, every burn, and every moment of cruelty the Thornwick pack had inflicted. Every fragment of agony she'd pulled from Theron. Every drop of hatred she'd seen in his own poisoned blade. Velas screamed. The sound was inhuman, tearing from his throat as he collapsed to his knees. His grip on her arm spasmed, then released. The crossbowman above hesitated, uncertain. That hesitation was enough. Kalen's warriors surged forward. The archers were overwhelmed before they could loose a single bolt. Velas's forces, seeing their leader writhing on the ground, began to surrender. Kaelin reached Elowin just as her legs gave out. He caught her, easing her to the floor, his face pale with fear. "What did you do?" "Gave him back what he gave others." Her voice was barely a whisper. The effort had hollowed her out completely. Everything he put in that poison, everything he made Theron feel, I made him feel it all at once. Valus had stopped screaming. He lay curled on the stones, weeping, broken in ways that had nothing to do with physical wounds. "Is he?" "Alive. But he'll never hurt anyone again." Elowin closed her eyes. "The poison's gone now. From Theron. From everyone. I burned it out of him." She felt Kaelin's arms tighten around her. "You brilliant, reckless, impossible woman." He breathed against her hair. "You could have died." "Worth it." She managed a weak smile. "Your face when I walked toward him." "Was the worst moment of my life? Then I guess we're even." He laughed, a broken sound that was half sob, and held her closer. Around them, the great hall slowly returned to order. The dead were counted. The wounded were tended. Valus was dragged away in chains, destined for a trial he would not survive, and Elowin, cradled in the arms of the Alpha King, finally let herself rest. 3 weeks later, Theron stood on his own 2 feet for the first time in months. The shadow poison was truly gone, burned away by Elowin's sacrifice. Color had returned to his cheeks. Strength had returned to his limbs. He'd taken to following Elowin around the keep, calling her "little sister" in a way that made her blush, and Kaelin roll his eyes. "He's insufferable when he's healthy," Kaelin complained one evening, but his smile betrayed him. He'd never looked happier. Valus's trial had been swift and decisive. The evidence was overwhelming. Letters, witnesses, the testimony of his own men seeking mercy. The council had sentenced him to death, and Kaelin had carried out the execution himself. "For my brother," he'd said. "For everyone he hurt." Elowin hadn't attended. She'd seen enough of Valus's cruelty in her visions. She didn't need to see him die. Now, standing on the battlements where they'd first kissed, she watched the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and rose. The air was cold, winter approaching in earnest, but she didn't mind. She'd grown to love the northern realm's harshness. It felt honest. "You've been avoiding me." She turned to find Kaelin approaching, his expression unreadable. "Not avoiding," she said. "Thinking." "About?" "The oath is fulfilled." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "Theron is healed. Valus is gone. By the terms of our agreement, I'm free to leave." Something flickered across his face. Pain, quickly controlled. "Yes, you are. You said you'd give me gold. Enough to start over anywhere." "I did." He moved closer, stopping just out of arm's reach. "Is that what you want? To start over somewhere else?" The question hung between them. Elowin thought about Thornwick, the courtyard where her mother burned, the life she'd fled from. She could never go back there. Wouldn't want to, even if she could. But she also thought about Valdris Keep, the library where she'd spent hours reading, the kitchens where the cook still pressed warm bread into her hands, the training yards where warriors nodded with respect, the chamber where she'd saved a dying man and discovered her gift was more than she'd ever known. And she thought about Kaelin, his patience, his fierce protectiveness, the way he looked at her like she was worth everything. "I had a life before I came here," she said slowly. "It wasn't much of a life, but it was mine. I knew my place in it. I knew what to expect. And now? Now I don't know anything." She took a breath. "Except that when I imagine leaving, when I imagine going somewhere you're not, it feels like cutting off a limb." His entire face transformed. Wonder, disbelief, and desperate hope breaking through his composure. "What are you saying, Elowin?" "I'm saying ask me." He closed the distance between them in one stride, his hands framing her face. "Stay." he said, his voice rough. Not because of the bond, not because of duty or obligation or gratitude. Stay, because I love you, because these past weeks have been the happiest of my life, because I want to wake up next to you every morning and argue with you every evening and grow old watching you read in my library. Tears streamed down her cheeks. You love me? Desperately, completely, in ways I didn't know I was capable of. I'm a sin-eater from a pack that treated me like refuse. You're a healer who saved my brother, a warrior who defeated my enemy, a woman who makes me want to be better than I am. He pressed his forehead to hers. Say yes, Elowen. Please. She kissed him instead. It was answer enough. They held the ceremony under the full moon, 1 month later. Elowen wore deep green silk, the color of the northern pines she'd grown to love. Kaelin wore formal black, his family's crest gleaming silver at his throat. Theron stood beside his brother, healthy and whole, grinning like he'd orchestrated the entire thing himself. I basically did, he'd told Elowen that morning. If I hadn't gotten stabbed, you two never would have met. That's a terrible way to take credit. I'm an innovator. The vows were simple: partnership, choice, love freely given, never demanded. When Elowen spoke her promises, she felt the mate bond settle fully into place. Not a chain, but a bridge. A connection that left room for both of them to be whole. Kaelin kissed her as the moon rose high, and the assembled wolves howled their approval. Later, much later, they lay tangled together in their chambers. Their chambers now, warm despite the winter wind outside. Tell me something, Kaelin murmured, tracing patterns on her shoulder. Something I don't know. Elowen considered. The night you found me, when you stepped out of the shadows and stopped Varn, I thought you were a hallucination. Something my mind invented because I'd finally broken. And now I think maybe I was broken. She shifted to look at him. But you didn't fix me. You just held the pieces until I could put them back together myself. His eyes softened. You did the same for me. For Theron. For this entire kingdom. I guess we're even then. Not even close. He kissed her forehead. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to balance the scales. That sounds like a lot of effort. You're worth it. He pulled her closer. You'll always be worth it. Elowen closed her eyes, listening to his heartbeat, feeling the bond hum between them. She thought about the woman she'd been, beaten, broken, convinced she deserved nothing but pain. That woman wouldn't recognize her now, wouldn't believe this was possible. But it was. All of it. And for the first time in her 23 years, Elowen let herself believe she deserved to be happy. Where are you listening from? Drop a comment below. I love connecting with you. And if this story touched your heart, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people find these tales.